Thanks for coming. This is our first of 3 events this week at the festival. My business partner Steve O'Brien, he's talking on Wednesday at Bromwell East. We're in our new HQ, and we've got a webinar on Friday too, so please tune in and look out for those. So today I'm here to talk about the product partnership and building a product for New Tomorrow. We've got some of the members of the TPP here. We've got Huw Robson just down here, Sophie from Realise, and Neil and Faye from New Icon, and Ollie, our events organiser over there from New Icon too. Oh, and Eric up there too. Sorry, I didn't spot you there, Eric. Without further ado, I'll get going. Any questions, we do a Q&A at the end. Hugh's going to jump in later and talk about some of the other members of the TPP and what they bring to the party. And yeah, I'll talk a bit about what New Icon do. So, introducing the product partnership. So, who is the product partnership? So we've got Realise, who do product design and manufacture. We've got Cubic, who are an electronic design and manufacture company, and Amalgam, who do model making and prototyping, and also New Icon, who are a software development agency. We'll go into more detail later about the details of all that. What does it mean? We're basically an end-to-end product design development company. We're not a company as such, it's a consortium of 4 companies that have come together, all experts in their own field. Obviously the product partnership had been going for probably 4 years, I think, before New Icon came into the fold, although New Icon had worked with Cubic and some of the companies over the years. We were at Bristol Science Park back then doing quite a lot of products. We worked on some Switchy, which we got a case study for later. That was a thermostat. Had connected devices to the internet. The type of work we do, this is why Bristol's such a great city for this type of thing. You have world-leading engineering companies, and you've got the creative industry sector right next to one another. I don't think there's many cities in the world that have that. We live at the intersection between the engineering and the digital design world. We've been the go-to partner for a number of companies, Airbus, SRT, Meggitt, over the years, and done some really interesting projects. So what skills do you need to build a product? We need product designers, you need product design engineers, electronic engineers, model makers, and digital designers. There's a whole raft of people that come in to make this happen. That's why it's not an easy sector to be in. We've not a lot of skill sets need to combine to build a perfect product. IoT challenges, as we know, that can vary from consumer products through to maintenance, oil and gas, energy, smart homes, a real raft. Brands, they need to evolve and keep up. There's a lot of shopping malls and things like that these days I think could be improved. Enabling shoppers to like retail outlets. How many times I've been to a shopping mall recently and found that where do you find something? I did click and collect at House of Fraser recently. It's like, where is that pair of jeans that I was supposed to collect? It would have been easier to just have a normal shopping experience. So yeah, could it have directed me to where that area of the shopping mall was? Store wait times, how many times we all turned up at a pharmacy or somewhere and just found you sat there waiting. Loyalty programs, real-time diagnosis for your combi boiler to know when it's due for maintenance. So many areas we can improve. I think this is what the bit that's sort of missing at the moment for me is that experiences don't feel natural yet in IoT. It's sort of, we've got these devices that are now connected to the internet, but they're not really as we'd like to use them in our homes. You have too many products like a light switch that's now suddenly got lots of buttons on walls, where you used to have just a light switch to walk in and turn my kitchen light on, and now you've got 20 buttons. And obviously Alexa and things like that have come in and started to make it more automated. But if I wanted to turn the kettle on in the morning, yes, I can set my kettle now, great. That's okay if you're the sort of person that gets up when your alarm goes off, and like me, who hits snooze and might get up 10 minutes later. So if I'd set my kettle to go off at 7 a.m, by the time I get downstairs, is it boiled my kettle? No, I'm 10 minutes late. Would it be better to have a sensor that knows as I'm going down the stairs that I could actually get to that kettle just as it's boiling up, ready for my morning coffee? And I think it's that sort of creating that physical world that just feels more seamless and natural is the way IoT is going. And that just comes down to user experience design. So that's what we do here at Product Partnership. We ask people to explore those problems of what problems exist in the world. Who will use this idea that you've come up with? What environment will it be used in? Does the world need your idea? There's a lot of products that get built that end up on Amazon, end up out there in ether that just are pretty useless. They're just they end up in landfill because they just weren't that useful. So how do you build a perfect product? How would it work? How do you go about doing it? So New Icon came up with an innovation kit a couple of years ago in the pandemic. I'm not going to talk at length about this today, but you can look on our website about this. We basically came up designing. Is that my 5-minute warning? Like time to wrap up. So, yeah, get on with it. Everyone wants coffee. There's no beer this time. So the kit was a way of people ideating ideas, looking at problem spaces and exploring the personas and the users that might use a product that solves a problem in the world. And we took the sort of design process and we consolidated it down into a day. So you could run a workshop in a day and explore all these personas and get from A to B, so we can define, develop and visualize ideas and bring them to life at pace. That process looks a lot like this. Whether you're Realize doing product design or New Icon doing, again, digital design, we follow very similar sort of processes of understanding your users and empathizing, as I said before, defining those, getting those insights and the data and really looking at what would make for a good product, and then ultimately coming up with great ideas and consolidating those down into something that you can visualize, bring to life and turn into a prototype. And ultimately testing, everyone have assumptions of what makes a good product, but you don't really know until you put it in the hands of users. So test and test and test again, but ultimately there's only so far you go. And I think what New Icon, especially talking from our own experiences, we've got quite good at knowing the sweet spot with testing, because we don't always have huge budgets to work with. We have to make some smart decisions based on our experience and other things. So sometimes the skill is in knowing when to stop testing, when it's ready to test the market, and where you just need to trust your intuition. So some key principles that we all in the product partnership stand by is, really understanding the problem and people, solving the problems first, and then getting into the detail. Always explore beyond first solutions. Very easy for someone to go, oh, you've cracked it, let's go on with that idea. And then test, as I said before, as cheaply as possible. And I think, like I said, budget comes into play more and often with a lot of projects that we work on. And the value's in the learning. You're always learning, and when a product's out there in the wild, you look at the iPhone and many big products out there, they've all evolved over the years. They're not the same products as they were when they first came out. So how do we do it? We bring together a team. Sometimes they are physical products that New Icon don't get involved in. Sometimes it is IoT based, hence what we're talking about today and some of the case studies. So I was going to invite Huw up just to go through Realize and Cubic's sort of background, and then I'll come back and talk about New Icon's side in a minute.
What is the forward backwards do? So that's what buttons. Yes. There. So yeah, in a sense, we came at this the other way, because the product partnership as the first three was all about physical product. We thought of ourselves very much as physical product. Within the area, and it does speak about the fact we've got so many interesting groups all doing a lot of digital virtual stuff, but there's still a core in Bristol of doing physical product design, and so we wanted to make that easier for companies to approach us, and we often work together. So we had these three groups, but ultimately those products need to connect out, and with something like the Internet of Things, you're definitely getting that point where you need the software side of the app. So that's where we pulled in a friend who had worked with quite a lot anyway. So the original three were Realize, and that's probably where it all starts, because you want to do product design of the physical device, whatever it might be. And you have to, let me see what the next slide says, yeah. So you want to do the user-centered side of this, you have to do the concept thinking, but then you need to move on to how you're going to engineer that so it's manufacturable, sustainable, and building into that is the branding. On product design side, it's getting behind the thinking of the user, and the user doesn't have to be the person who's the consumer of this, but it could be the installer, it could be the servicing engineer. So you have to really think about all aspects of how this is going to pan out and work for them. So realise, have that down, and it's a process. It's not magic, and it's not some kind of artistic thing. It's not something that you do at the end. I'm an engineer, so I was very much of that party who used to think that you do your engineering, then you get a designer in to just polish it at the end. That's just not what good design's about. Good design is about coming in at the beginning, really testing all the concepts, doing the research to understand what it is you're trying to solve, and then come at it with a process that narrows things down. I don't know if you've got the squiggle. Where's the squiggle diagram?
Sorry,
Took it out. I love the squiggle diagram. Basically, you're starting with an awful lot of complexity all over the place, and you're trying to build this down till you get to a point of clarity about what you're going to do. As you move through that, you're spending more and more and more, and it all gets scarier and scarier and scarier, because by the time you get to production, that's where the big bucks hit. So what you don't want is to be wrong, or vastly wrong at that stage. And if you're wrong and you try and correct it at that stage, it's going to cost you an awful lot of money. So the process, and New Icon do it with software design, Realise do it with product design, physical product design, is to work that through in a fairly rigid way in terms of the process, albeit very creative within that, to at every stage do your research, do your concepts, do your development, and then finally bring it up and engineer it for production. So that's why we have the confidence that we can do that time and time again, whether it's a big crane or whether it's a small eyelash brush, or whether it's something very quick on a web, or whether it's going to be a complex app. So that's the Realise side of things. But you're going to put tech into it, probably. Not necessarily. You might be just a physical product that we did something for plumbers, where it's just something that pushes things into a hole. That's fine. But if you're going to have tech in it, and probably almost everybody here is going to be putting tech into it, then you have electronics. Then you've got an interesting combination, because you've got the electronics being designed alongside the physical product. So it's a chicken egg. What comes first? You do your board and then build something around it? Or do the designers design what it's going to look like, and the guys have to make the board fit? Ultimately, it's a conversation. And that's why I think if you take a group like TPP, where we say, well, actually, we work together a lot, and we can have those conversations. You, as the person who might be requesting this work, hasn't got to manage all these different little axes and get them to all talk properly together. So Cubic Innovation, they're the guys who do the electronics, and they do the embedded software. So they do the design of it, they will manufacture it up to 1,000 off, they'll do one off, they'll test it. They have a wealth of understanding of the whole regulatory side of things, so if you're worried about all of that. And of course, if you're doing your own electronic design, or if you're doing your own product design, or if you're doing your own software design, you can come and ask for the bits of it you need. So we have a client at the moment who's just really used us for the regulatory side of things and the testing, which has gone on and on and on, but at least it's got there. We could have said, we told you so, and said, come to us at the beginning, and it would have been a lot cheaper. But it got there in the end. Just to say that Cubic understand every aspect of it. So they can do the comms, they can do the networking, they can do the 5G, they can work with all those different kinds of modules. And we talked about the regulatory stuff, which has got more complicated now we've left Europe. So we've got CE, and we've got UKCA, and we've got the American FCC. Perhaps the most exciting and unusual group within all of this is Amalgam, simply because the model making side of things is not that widespread. And here in Bristol, we've got one of the southwest, if not the UK's leading model makers. Model making is a wide-ranging thing, because they sit there, and if you saw the Wallace and Gromits that used to be painted and put around Bristol, they did the original carved originals and did the mouldings, which then the artist took and did. So they can work big. They can do big Oscar statues for events, or they can work on architectural models, or they can make those beautiful model yachts or cars, or point of sale stuff, or all those sort of things. But what we use them for more than anything is the prototyping. So prototyping as a whole, probably talk in its own right, which we're not going to get into today, But many people think of it wrongly. So they think the prototype is just the final thing before the production model. But you can do much cheaper prototyping much earlier. And that fast turn, whether it's with the software, whether it's the product design itself, is kind of critical. So whether you go to them for just a carved space model, just to see whether it fits in your hand, or whether you finally go for something that can be a product in its own right, if you're going to make 4 or 5 of, then these guys have extraordinary capability for making things. They are makers. They would describe themselves as makers. So they can 3D print, and they can use all these different processes. They work with plastics and metals and card and wood and the finishing and the spraying and all the rest of it. But probably most of all, we use casting. So they will do casting, a bit like injection molding, but they'll do it for 1 off, 2 off, 5 off. So you can prove things, or you can launch it, or you can test it out properly. But they also do all this other interesting stuff, which is exhibitions and creative. So if you're going to go to an exhibition, you still might value that kind of creative insight and making capability. And so, as I say, eventually we're doing all of that in our little group and occasionally reaching out, but so much of the world is now moving to this idea of the Internet of Things, connected stuff, that then we're back onto software. So I'll pass it back to Mark and take questions at the end.
Yeah, thanks. If anyone hasn't met Huw before, Huw had a very interesting career at Hewlett Packard at HP Labs. So he's an engineer working on many products over a decade or two. So always worth having a chat with Huw. A lot of insight there. So thanks, Huw. Obviously, my side of things, moving on to the design. Obviously, if Neil was doing this talk up here, he'd be like talking data all day long. I come from a design background, so I'm probably going to hinge on the side of the design. I grew up as a graphic designer, and I think in the early days it was all about brand and UIs and things, and I've come to realise over the last decade that everything is about how it works, how it functions, and how easy it is to use. But moving into more connected products over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, yes, we still do standalone mobile apps and back office systems, but a lot of it comes down to information hierarchy. Can someone just pick that device up and understand how to use it and how it will work with the physical product so it complements it? So, these blended immersive experiences we talked about earlier, designing design systems, so if the modules and the features of the app and the product extend, they've got some continuity as new designers come in and the product evolves, just making sure that the widgets you design, or whether that's a slider or a drop-down menu, things have got a sense of continuity and things will flow. The big one that we found working on IoT projects more than even back office systems is you're always connecting to some data from somewhere, a sensor, or there's always some data coming in. And that's the mistake that I think we made in the early days sometimes, the designers assuming that you can grab some data from somewhere and you'll be able to display it. If that data doesn't exist or you can't get hold of it, then you're not going to serve up the right experience. You can easily move into development and find that data flow just doesn't work. So that's something we spend more and more time on now, working with the likes of Cubic, looking at these APIs and what data is available. Cubic will focus a lot on the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the data consumption. Obviously, there's a lot these days in terms of it's not drawing down on the battery too much. We have to make some smart decisions around that along the way too, and that's where the collaboration of the product partnership, I think, really comes into its own. And then, of course, we have to build it. Our architecture phase is something that I could talk a whole hour-long talk or more on, but ultimately it's the blueprint for the software we go on to build. Far cheaper to make changes during our agile architecture phase, which is effectively UX design, UI design and prototyping, than it is when you get to build it. Developing solutions though that meet all the requirements along the way, creating an internet-based language. We often use web technology most of the time to build mobile apps and things, but project that I'd love to talk to you about, but they haven't launched it yet, so I'm under NDA and I've asked them, they won't let me talk about it just yet, so I have to wait till after Christmas. But a marine project that we're working on, which is a real industry first. I think, Neil, is it 5 languages you're programming in on that one? 6. It's 6, yeah. It's a lot. We've got to connect with all the APIs. You've got the sort of native languages on top of the web technologies for Java for Android and iOS and Swift. There's a lot to it. So the projects we're working on are getting ever more complex in terms of being able to have fast, reactive apps. Where possible, we use web technology just because it's a single language that can be in your car kit or home kit, or can be used on the web, or can be compiled down to an app. It's very versatile, but that doesn't always go fast enough in terms of performance. So sometimes we have to use more native features of the phones. I won't get into this in detail, but this just gives you an idea of the complexity of how these partners have to work together. Because Cubic is very waterfall by the nature of what they do. They have to specify everything up front. Because if you can't go and manufacture something and then go, oh, I've changed my mind, it's a long way back and quite costly. Where we're lucky in sort of design, and same with Realise, that you can be a little bit more agile, you can be a bit more test, learn, oh, that didn't work, start and try another idea, and it hasn't cost you so much time and money. Where Cubic have to work a bit different, and then obviously Amalgam come along with that sort of solutions ready to be prototyped. So just gives you an idea that project management, Faye up there, our project manager, and the team have got their work cut out when it comes to these sort of projects. So there is a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things to coordinate to bring it all together when we're working to deadlines and timelines. Switchy was a project that unknowingly we did with the whole product partnership before we were part of the product partnership, because New Icon have only been part of it for 12-18 months. But Cubic we met back at Bristol Science Park, like I mentioned. Realise I didn't know at the time actually designed this, so we were sort of working together not knowing. We've all seen Nest thermostats and things like this, but this was predominantly for social housing. So the dashboard down in the bottom right corner was very much letting the councils, big brother watching them of, are they using too much energy, but really so they could educate people that you don't have to have your heating cranked up to this amount, and they could monitor it across thousands of people's homes. So this was going back 5 years, Sophie, maybe even more. So yeah, this was pretty cutting edge at the time when this stuff was quite new. This is a project that we literally launching this week. So this is a vibration devices that go into buildings to sense all the noise and vibrations. So the client basically would have architects using this, and they would take a lot of learning out of their current buildings into future buildings, of knowing where, was it the disco at 1 a.m. that was causing the vibration with the bass drum going, or was it actually down to a window frame that rattles against the floor and causes some ongoing vibration through the building? And it's actually quite a problem in a lot of sky-rise buildings. So these guys were industry first, nobody had done this before, put these devices in, and we built the management portal that allows them to add different buildings, add the different floors, add the devices, manage all the devices, and get some metrics and data out of it so they can learn. And we do a lot of these sort of dashboard projects. This is fairly bread and butter for us these days. That's it on everything that's come before. In terms of the future, product partnership, yes, going great guns really. We've had some really exciting projects. The marine one that I'm desperate to talk about but can't, so that'll be one for the next event. Got a new TPP website launching next month, so that'll just have a bit more details about us, an updated brand. We're launching a associate membership offering. We've got some partners, so this is really people we've worked with in our network over the last decade between us all that we think are good. And some of them are freelance, some are small to medium-sized companies, and this can be brand bid writers. We work a lot with people, entrepreneurs who want to get investment, so we know people that are pretty damn good at writing these bids in a view to get money. Of course, if they get money, we get to do exciting projects. That can be IP lawyers, branding agencies, anyone who's complementary. So we're inviting in people from our network to be these subsidiary partners. So if we're all sat down in a meeting and we need to pull someone in, they can come in and form part of this consortium to add a bit of extra value. And that's what we're trying to do with the TPP, just add that extra value, but without the cost associated with it. Kinnear Defoe or some huge companies are out there. Got some new case studies, like I mentioned, coming, and we'll be doing more webinars, guides, talking about processes and just sharing our knowledge more. We tried to set up an academy during the pandemic, and that sort of got put on the back burner. So we're starting sort of smaller now, rather than trying to create a whole academy and get people to come in and train people. We're just trying to put a lot of our content out there for free on webinars, on video. So look out for more of that coming soon. And the innovation kit, we've had a lot of universities using it. So what we're going to do is rebrand it from New Icon into the product partnership and let physical product designers use it as well as digital designers. We've got 350 students up at UWE who've used it for 2 years now, and that's with their Engineers Without Borders program that allows them to design physical products, solving third world water problems and shortages. So they've had real success using it. So we know what we're onto something when we came up with it, but it was a bit of a sidetrack for us from the main business model. But we feel it's got a lot of value for a lot of people who just want to democratize design, get a load of people in a room, maybe 7 or 8 people, and workshop out an idea. And anyone can do this. You don't need to come to a company like New Icon or Realise to do this. So we're training people to do it. We've been given the kit, we sell the kits online currently. A lot of companies, right up to large companies like Cartier came to us a while ago and wanted us to run a whole program training all of their team to do it. So yeah, a lot of opportunities come out of building this kit, and we're quite excited about where it can go, especially in education. And that is that. So thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed the talk, and have some tea and coffee in 3 seconds.